So let me ask, when I show this blue logo, who's the first character you think of? No brainer, it's Sonic. Sure, you might have a different favorite Sega character like Ai, Beat, Kiryu Yakuza, or Knights, but if you're looking at this blue logo shouting Sega, you can probably envision Sonic standing next to it. But hold on a second, Sonic didn't come out until 1991, and Sega as known has been around since 1960, with a blue logo since the 70s. Who'd they have before then? Well, no one 800% concrete until Sonic, really. However, who many consider the unofficial mascot of their 8-bit Master System was Alex Kidd, one of the most mismanaged intellectual pieces of shit Sega's ever thrown out. And I think we need to back up for some context before I piss off the British and Brazilian boomers. Nah, don't worry, I know who my audience is. Now, something to keep in mind with Sega, especially during this era, is that they aren't purely a home video game company. Sega's produced slot machines, anime, pinball cabinets, arcades, toys, and even a fucking punching bag, which, as you can see, they at least all fall into the entertainment industry. It's not like Konami, who's doing a round-off back handspring into a gymnastics team. Anyway, Sega during the late 70s and early 80s had a lot of arcade games, and made a fair amount of ports to home computers like the Atari 8-bit and Commodore series, and some console ports like the Atari 2600 and ColecoVision, with the ColecoVision part having some importance. See, Sega had a deal with Coleco to distribute the ColecoVision in Japan. However, Coleco decided not to venture into the Japanese markets, which may have been due to the American video game crash, and of all things, Coleco's extreme popularity with Cabbage Patch Kids. Despite Coleco leaving, Sega was still pretty interested in the home market at the time, as their arcade division had gained serious notoriety with titles like Zaxxon and Monaco GP, resulting in Sega releasing their own console in Japan that took a few inspirations from the ColecoVision called the SG-1000. Fun fact, that's the first use of the Sega jingle. There weren't a lot of games on it, and the controller was this thing. It didn't flop near as hard as most home consoles in Japan did at the time, but it sure as fuck didn't cuck like the Famicom did. The SG-1000 was redesigned 2.5 more times to eventually have the Sega Master System that we know globally. It's an alright system that did modestly, but couldn't hold a handle to the NES and Famicom. The Master System has wildly different stories depending on the country we're looking at, and holy shit, I'm not getting into what happened in Brazil today, but the bottom line is that globally it wasn't that hot. And one of the reasons Sega thought the Master System floundered was the lack of a killer app. A Super Mario Bros. For the system. And yeah, that's definitely part of it, though the NES's third-party support and intense marketing are definitely more important. Anyway, Sega decided they needed a platformer game that could rival Super Mario Bros. To do such, they were working on a game based on the extremely popular manga, tell me if you've heard about it, Dragon Ball, which had only recently begun its anime adaptation. Now, I feel like this might be obvious, but getting a game based on Dragon Ball, let alone maybe the first Dragon Ball game, would have been huge at this point. However, somewhere in the middle of development, Sega lost the Dragon Ball rights, which is somewhat funny, given that Mario was only created because Nintendo couldn't get the Popeye rights for the original Donkey Kong. Could that be a sign that Alex Kidd is the next Mario? Yeah, fuck no. Alex didn't really work out. I mean, first of all, let's look at this design. Not the most memorable thing around. It's just some kid with big ears trying to feel important. I mean, if you're gonna make George Bush a video game character, at least let me watch his drive. And even then, his design is far too inconsistent throughout all of his appearances to be popular globally. In Japan, he at least had the same outfit on all the boxes, but by God, he looks cracked the fuck out on some of these. In the Western boxes, oof, you should just look at these yourself, buddy. But that doesn't even compare to what happened with the games itself, which is where the mismanaging really just missed everything. His first outing was Alex Kidd in Miracle World on the Sega Master System. It was a traditional platformer game with some adventure elements and the main topic of today, so we'll come back to it in a little bit. Then there was an arcade game called Alex Kidd The Lost Stars, which was your most basic of arcade platformers that had nothing to do with the first game. It also went to Master System later. Followed by Alex Kidd BMX, which was only in Japan and is like a worse version of Spy Hunter. While Westerners got Alex Kidd High Tech World, which is a puzzle-focused action-adventure title that isn't even really Alex Kidd. In Japan, it was a licensed game based off an anime called Anmitsu Hime, and one quick look tells me I'm not the target demographic for this, so no, I didn't watch any for research. It's not really that fun, and it's like some kind of mix between Home Alone on NES and Takeshi's Challenge. And next up, Alex made it to the Genesis with Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, the only 16-bit entry and the only one to follow the formula set by Miracle World. I think it's what Alex Kidd fans consider the best one, maybe? I don't know, I should have bought Wonder Boy! And then the final game is a bit of an oddity. Originally, Sega was working on a Shinobi spin-off called Shinobi Kid. It had a cute little version of Shinobi, not dissimilar to Mighty Final Fight or Kid Dracula. But then someone decided, LMAO, it'll be fucking hilarious if we throw Alex Kidd in. And we ended up with Alex Kidd in Shinobi World for Sega Master System, which, while developed in Japan, never released there. And I gotta be honest, it's the only Alex Kidd game I can bear playing, and that's probably because I'm a Shinobi fan and it has nothing to do with Alex Kidd. Anyway, after Shinobi World, Sega stopped making any Alex Kidd titles since they realized Kidd wasn't going anywhere, and boom, here runs Sonic going everywhere fast. From then on, Alex faded into obscurity besides in the minds of Euros and Brazilians that got Miracle World as a pack-in with the Master System Model 2. Now today, after 30 years in hibernation, a new remake of the original title comes out on all the major platforms. And before I say anything else, because I'm gonna be negative here, I have got to praise the remake job. The team has put their all into this. The art style, music, and menus look absolutely gorgeous. This is the exact way you should update an 8-bit game. And it really makes me hopeful that this team will remake something else in the future, because no matter how I look at it, it's still Alex Kidd and Piss Me Off World. Now, when looking at the original Alex Kidd, there's two things we need to keep in mind. First is that this was originally a Dragon Ball game, and the second is that this was meant to be the anti-Mario. So Alex himself, he can jump and punch. That doesn't mean he jumps on enemies though. Oh no. Jumping on top of an enemy is instant death. One hit per life unless you have one of the rare shield items that works in some way. I really don't know. Sometimes it didn't do shit, and other times it did every shit. But I didn't find it often enough to really know what the shit I was doing with it, so I'm still not 100% sure how to take a shit. Moving on, Alex's main means of attack is punching enemies with this dinky bitch punch that only hits what is directly in front of him. This punch has no range, and I'd often find myself just standing there waiting on the enemy to walk up to me while I mash the punch button like I mashed your mom. Oh, and the vertical range on it also blows ass, so it gets downright aggravating trying to hit any enemy that is not planted squarely on the floor and walking horizontally. Amazingly, back when the game was based on Dragon Ball, Goku would have had the power pull, which I imagine would have had a far better range than this punch. And I really wished Alex maintained a pull, because even just a small amount of extra range vertically or horizontally would make his hurt box feel much more useful. If you want any good use of offensive means, you want one of these rings that give Alex a powerful projectile, and hold on to it as long as possible. Which won't be long, because if you die, you lose it. Now, technically you have two ways of procuring the rings. You can pay for them at the shops at the start of some stages, or you can find them in punchable blocks. But this felt random as fuck to me, because I'd punch a block to find an item, only to come back to the same block and find nothing, and then maybe I hit the same block a third time to find something better. Oh! But not only that, sometimes the blocks will have unkillable Grim Reapers in them that follow you until you reach the boss, or they just kill you. Let's compare this to Mario for a minute. Every block in a typical Mario platformer is decided. This block has an item, this one has a poison mushroom, here's
the fucking green lizard from Mario.
But you know what? Fuck memorizing a stage's secrets, let's randomize the blocks. So now this block might have an extra life, could have a fire flower, or maybe it's just the fucking Grim Reaper. I started gathering eventually that there is some form of pattern to the blocks, but I felt discouraged to check any of them since a random Grim Reaper would result in instant death in many instances where avoiding it was impossible. Which fucking sucks, because there'll be these hard to reach blocks and I'll think, whoa, that's gotta be something sweet, only to then be gifted with a death that feels like no fault of my own. Now, before getting into stage design, I think it's important to look at the setting. Alex is a young martial artist trying to save the land of Redaxian, which was attacked by the great John Ken. John Ken turned the people into stone, defeated King Thunder, and kidnapped Prince Engel and his fiancée Princess Laura. Early in the journey, Alex's adoptive father and martial arts master tells him that he's actually the long-lost twin brother of Eagle and the second prince of Redaxian. It's your basic 8-bit platformer story. Alex saves his brother, Redaxian, the princess, defeats John Ken and his forces, and releases the citizens from their stone prisons. The only slight twist is that it ends on a cliffhanger where he goes to find King Thunder, who's still missing. It's not an innovative story, but as my parents remind me, I'm not accomplishing anything with my life by critiquing the story of a platformer on Master System. The point I want to reach is that while the Dragon Ball IP was stripped pretty well from Miracle World, there's still some Journey to the West vibes you can feel throughout. Alex has a visual similarity to Sun Wukong, the Great Jonkin has a similar vibe as the Bull Demon King, and a general atmosphere that radiates traditional Chinese folklore, which we can see in the enemy, architecture, and side character designs. I'll be honest, this is missing a lot in the original 8-bit version, but the HD edition has really brought that look to life, especially when accompanied by the music. I want to stress the beauty of this remake yet again, because oh whoops, I'm angry now. This level layout and the way Alex controls within it does not work. Alex is ungodly loose. Every nanometer of his jump and basic walks feels as though there's a bar of soap that just ran down his ass crack. A loosely controlled character is not inherently bad, but when the stage design of Miracle World is so blocky with tight jumps and corridors aplenty, it gets aggravating. Even more so when the slightest nudge on an enemy instantly gives Alex the wash his slippery ass soap couldn't. Alex feels as though he has a gigantic hitbox while his punch hits jack shit. Any time where I jumped and hit an enemy, whether on the way up or down, did not feel like fault of my own, but of Alex's oversized sprite and uncontrollable physics. Compare that to Sonic. He's a character that runs fast, and while he feels tight, it does implore you to go somewhat loose. However, ever since the first game, you can just tap down, roll into a ball, and hit anything in front of you. Not to mention, there's rings everywhere to give you some insurance, and a shield that is pretty common. So with Sonic, you almost always have 2 hits to take, and when you're going fast, you can protect yourself. Alex does not have that form of protection. The only time I experienced a semblance of control with Alex was during the portions in the pedicopter, which didn't happen often, and it Hindenburgs too easily for my taste. Same goes for the motorcycle, which absolutely mows through enemies and breakable blocks, but the moment it touches something solid, it's out of here. You just wasted a lot of money at the fuck, and oh, it's gone. With how fast and uncontrollable it is, it's hardly noticeable that you even had it because you either ripped through the stage or you lost it immediately, often with another death afterwards. Now, when you do actually make it to a boss, you're greeted with multiple different kinds of asinine bullshit. You're either playing a game of rock, paper, scissors, fighting a boss with a wonky ass hitbox, or maybe just both, fuck it. Now these rock, paper, scissors matches actually have a pattern, but there's no way a first time player is going to know that, meaning there's a high ass chance that their first attempt is a guaranteed death. And it's bullshit like this that makes me really recommend turning on the infinite live option that the remake gives you, which even when turned on, I still find myself getting pissed off at this. Alex really needed some kind of insurance like the super mushrooms or rings I mentioned earlier. One hit death in a platformer is not something that gets me coming back, especially with Alex's lack of an offensive arsenal. As I go through the game, I don't think, how do I improve my own skills whenever I die? I think how I got jibbed by the unfair rules, which I feel is the antithesis to a good Sega game. I get a C rank in a Sonic game, I go back doing as many tricks as possible. A low hit ratio in Panzer Dragoon, I find the optimal shots. I only serve 2 customers in Crazy Taxi? Let's get fucking crazier. It's this design philosophy that I think helps many Sega games stick out, and it's what Alex Kidd lacked greatly. As we all know, Alex would die completely after Sonic became the official mascot of Sega. Sonic screams everything about Sega, and I don't think many people are going to try to argue that Alex was a better fit than Sonic the Hedgehog. On paper, I somewhat want to feel bad for Alex, but when I play his games, all I can do is see how much of it went wrong. And while I am just irrefutably angry when I play this, I'm glad that Sega has given him another chance. Similar to Sonic Mania, the remake of Miracle World was created by fans of the original, who were actually working on a fan remake anyways. And this willingness to let someone else take the reins of their dormant franchises is what I've loved most about Sega recently. Streets of Rage 4, Sonic Mania, Panzer Dragoon remakes, Shin Sakura Wars, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, and maybe some others upon the horizons. Sega is at a point where they're taking risks with their franchises, a luxury they obviously only have because of their success with big ticket series such as Persona, Phantasy Star Online 2, Yakuza, and Sonic. Even if I can't fucking stand Alex Kidd, I still want to make Sega realize that there's potential in reawakening their dormant IPs, which they're realizing with the growth of fan games. Hell, as we see with so many of these, they just hire the fucking fans to do it. And even if they don't, they still leave projects like Bomb Rush Cyberpunk alone. It's a mutual respect between publisher and patrons that make me glad to be a Sega fan.